much, Kadaria. We think that the time has come for Nigeria to have transformational and effective and competent leadership, which it has not had for many, many years. The challenges of the 21st century call for a very different type of leadership from the type that Nigeria has had over the past 20 years. We need to take our place in the 21st century. Nigeria's youth make up over 50% of the voting population. So this is an election about their future. And so their future cannot be best protected by people who do not understand their needs, people who do not understand the way they think, people who don't understand the requirements of managing modern economies in the 21st century. That is what we bring to the table. Our ticket of the Kingsley Moghalu Umma Getso presidency from 2019, hopefully, will make Nigeria a modern nation.
Now, you talked about the issue of economics here. And
absolutely.
So we kind of clear, because you're a former CBN governor, that you do have some economic background.
Sure.
But you're running in, I'd like to hear a little bit more from her about what she sees as the issues around the economy, particularly because our constitution, as you know,
especially people that have been active in politics. I personally what gives me the passion to join politics is not what the way as the normal thinking of today's politics. Because many of us see politics as something, as a kind of place to make money. So to become the drive is the initial thing that even leads somebody to what to do. So to become my drive and my passion for the love of my nation is what drives me and to afford me to where I'm standing today. So when it comes to economy, my background, I'm a banking and finance student, and I've been an entrepreneur from a very, very early age. So I'm very sure, and with what crop already have in ground for Nigeria, I will definitely meet up, and I will give Nigerians what they deserve, in line with what he has already done, because I am only dreaming along with him.
Okay. Now, I'd like to make this as interactive as possible, so I'm going to dive in straight away, trying to get members of the public to talk. And since we've started talking about the economy, I think we will see the economy for this particular. Ahmed has a question on the economy. Is he around? Okay, no problem. We'll put the question to you anyway.
Sure.
So he sent a question to say, how do you plan to create jobs?
The jobs problem, the way my government will break the back of that problem is as follows. First of all, we have to create the philosophical foundation for a productive economy. An economy that is not productive, that relies on oil rents, cannot create jobs. So we're going to move the economy to innovation, to be an innovation-driven economy where inventions and new ways of doing things become the new driving force of the economy. That will create jobs. So how? Specifically, yes. When people invent, and there are many inventions in Nigeria today, none of which has seen the light of day in terms of you're finding them on the shelf in the marketplace. But in America, in Japan, in China, what you see being sold as economic transactions are innovations. That's what we will bring in Nigeria. When people invent things, we will enable them by creating the necessary policy environment for the commercialization of new inventions to be pipelined into the market. We will also back it up with access to finance for new and young entrepreneurs through a 1 trillion naira venture capital fund. Access to finance is a very big problem in Nigeria, which my administration will address directly. And the reason it's a problem is because there is too much reliance on credit. And credit in this country is difficult for two reasons. It's either you don't have the collateral to get it, or if you get it, the interest rate is too high. So we're going to be coming with equity capital, which is not a loan that you have to repay. It's an investment to help you start a new business, and that new business will create jobs for many people.
Now, I
Yes.
Putting together a fund ask is the contribution that the government is going to do.
Yes. Yes.
Where are you going to get that money?
Yes.
We're already hearing that resources are limited.
Yes.
So where is the 500 billion that is the government's?
There are two main ways that we will get the money from. First of all, is that we're going to be abolishing any subsidies for petroleum importation in this country. That will save the government between 600 billion naira to 1 trillion naira every year, which is a waste that's currently going on. So that's a clear saving. Two, we're going to take the 500 billion naira social intervention fund and turn it around. Right now, that fund is recycling poverty. You are giving a man fish or pretending to be giving him fish instead of teaching him how to fish. So we're going to turn that fund into a productive fund that creates wealth in this economy. So these are part of the ways that the 500 billion that the government will contribute. The private sector will contribute 500 billion. And already there's so much interest in this idea from venture capital firms around the world.
Now, I am a little bit concerned about hearing that you essentially want to take money from the poorest of the poor to give people who might be considered middle class. And for Uma, for example, that comes from the north, which is seeing a high level of poverty. I'd like to get an idea from you what your thoughts are regarding taking away funding from a program which is basically directed at the poorest of the poor and putting it in a fund that will be accessed by entrepreneurs.
The major problem we have is that it's not that the funds are not there, just as Prof. Is saying. The funds are there, it's just to send them where they should go to. So I'm very sure with such kind of innovative thinking, the funds should definitely go to where they're going to go, and it will be to the benefit of the common man.
May I add, if you don't mind, the 20 million unemployed Nigerians are privileged. We're trying to give them jobs.
Yes, but you are talking specifically about targeting entrepreneurs.
Yes. That's, no, you're targeting.
And so the question is whether is that if this is also on the pre-plan assumption that the company will have an environment to actually utilize what we already have. I mean, we do have the sovereign wealth fund.
Sure.
We have the excess people.
Yeah.
So it would appear as if funds have been created before. And the issue is really about how to channel these funds.
Yes. Let me clarify, please. There are 20 million unemployed people in this country. The way to create jobs in modern 21st century economies is through entrepreneurship and through starting small-scale businesses. That has been proven in most capitalist economies around the world. We are practicing capitalism without capital. So my proposal for a 1 trillion naira venture capital fund is not just a fund that will trigger a productive economy of innovation and manufacturing. It's a fund that will create jobs. Because and it's aimed mostly at young people who are unemployed, but they may have a bright business idea, but they don't have to take a loan. The fund will invest in their new business. When they start their business, that business will employ 1, 2, 3, 4 people, maybe. As it grows, it will employ more people. If you multiply these kinds of small-scale businesses by the thousands and the hundreds of thousands, you're creating millions of jobs. That's how jobs are created. So that is the logic behind this, because there are 3 requirements of a modern capitalist economy to function well. The first is property rights. The second is innovation. The third is capital. The venture capital fund will bring the sorely needed capital into Nigeria's economic environment that has been lacking. People cannot take bank loans and pay back at 30%. People cannot take bank loans if they're unemployed and have no collateral. This is venture capital. You don't need collateral to access it. You share the profit with the investing fund. And after the fund has recovered its investment, they will exit, the business is yours. Maybe at that time, it's already a much bigger business than when you started. So the government itself cannot create the jobs that are needed. So when you are giving people a so-called social intervention fund, which the performance is abysmally poor, what is the percentage of that fund that is actually reaching people? You know, it's a different thing to claim things in the media, and we see all the millions of unemployed.
Okay, does it bother you at all that there's an increasing deficit in this country? Essentially, we're spending more than we are earning.
Of course.
And
certainly within the 4 years of my administration, the fund would have made a huge impact in the Nigerian economy. It's not going to take more than 6 to 9 months to set it up from entering into office and get it operational. Within a year or two, you'll begin to see a massive impact around the country.
I'd like to pin you down to a number.
Sure.
If you get this fund up and running and you're in government, how many jobs do you think you're going to do in the first year and the second year?
Nigeria has about 3 million entrants into the job market every year. We anticipate that this fund itself, there are other ways of creating jobs which I can talk about. It's not just the fund. But we anticipate that this fund can create between 1 and 2 million jobs every year, new jobs. Now, agriculture is another place where we're going to go into a lot of investments by the private sector through value chains, not just for cultivation, but for transportation, for storage, for processing, and for exports. The more we invest in these areas, the more jobs are created.
This is, of course, a town hall.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to dominate it, and I'd like to invite people to start asking the candidates some questions. We have someone in the audience called Kadaria Ahmed. He's not here. Okay, there's a gentleman, there's a mic over there. So please, if you stand up, introduce yourself, and then ask your question.
My name is
The important thing about the declaration of assets is that public officers must declare their assets as required by law. Now, there's something that goes on in this country, that people make all kinds of populist promises, such as the kinds of promises that the present president made when he was coming in, oh, I'll declare this, I'll declare that, and at the end of the day, all sorts of questions arose about whether those assets were declared as publicly as they were presented during the campaigns. What I will tell you is that I will declare my assets as required by law. Now, if I choose to...
What is your understanding
yes.
of what the law requires?
Oh, yes. The law requires you to declare all your assets, but they are required to be submitted through a process. You fill a form, and everything is verifiable, so that there's a record of the things you owned before you came into public office. That's the whole point.
Will you be amenable to that declaration being made public?
I have no objection.
People who say we declare for
Sure. I have no objection. I have no problem with that at all, because in the first place, my most important asset is my intellectual property. That there's a big exaggeration about how much funding is needed for a presidential campaign. The APC and the PDP, the politicians, the old recycled politicians, they create the impression that you need 50 billion naira to run a presidential campaign. Our track record tells us that 40 of that 50 billion among the traditional politicians will end up in the private pockets of many politicians, and only 10 may be used. So, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Good. Good point. How much I've spent so far? Well, I've spent over, I would say, 200 million. Yeah, mostly donations and my own private funds. I'm not a beggar on the street. I have savings, and I have used those savings in a sacrificial manner for the progress of this country. I'm not funded by any godfathers. I'm not funded by any special interests. So I've used my hard-earned money. Everything I own, you can trace it. I have always worked in public life and for some while as a private consultant. So you can trace everything I own. Yes.
You said that politicians were tired of the things that happening in Nigeria and it's funding your campaign. Would you be willing to publish a register of the people that contributed to the campaign?
If that is required of every candidate, why not?
So you wouldn't be a little example and be the only person.
I'm happy to do that. There's no secret to my funding. I mean, people just contribute. Some people drop, 20K. Some people drop 50K. Some people give 100K, So people just give according to their ability. And we've had a lot of these kinds of donations, you know. And I can also share, you know, if necessary, my own savings that I have used in a sacrificial manner. Most people wouldn't do what I have done. I have come into politics to run for the presidency, you know, at great financial risk. I wasn't a wealthy person. Most people who go in are wealthy people, or they're using stolen money from, you know, various political escapades. But that's not what we're doing. And yet, consider the impact we have made. In the 9 months since I entered politics, today, the YPP and my candidacy is the third force in Nigerian politics today.
Okay. A quick question before we take our first break. And your dad was a senator of the Federal Republic of India, so both of you cannot be considered like either working class or, to what extent do you think your privileges influencing the way you are planning to run this country, or maybe not?
Okay. I think, yes, my parents were both civil servants. So they were not wealthy people, but they served the Nigerian government, did not have any wealth, but they trained me through school. My father did not leave any property for me when he passed away, but he gave me the most important thing, which is education. With that education, we know what a normal country should look like. And so I cannot apologize for the fact that my parents educated me. If you want to call that privilege, maybe, because there are many people who deserve that type of education, like the 13 million children who are out of school today. They don't have it. So my being educated, that's what I would call it, has shown me what Nigeria should look like in terms of the unity of our country, in terms of the economy of our country, in terms of our standing in the world. And I intend to be a president that will use his education for the benefit of the poor. That's why I am focused on lifting millions of people structurally out of poverty into the middle class.
Actually, we have a very
Yeah. Yeah, education, and then discuss restructuring. Yeah. Well, concerning education, I just wanted to add that today, ASU is on strike. It's a national tragedy, and this is the 13th time we are witnessing this national tragedy since 1988. So roughly every 2 years, our universities shut down. Tell me, how can a country that is governed in this manner make progress?
What do you see as the problem?
Yes.
That is causing issues to occur at
Yes.
university tertiary education?
That's right. There are two problems concerning the ASU strikes. The first is that our political leaders are not willing to invest in education. They are more willing to invest in paying the salaries, fat salaries of members of the National Assembly. They are more willing to invest in paying salaries of 1 million special assistants and personal assistants to special assistants than to invest in human capital. This country, so investment, it's underfunded. We need to invest much more in education. That's number one. Number two, we need the autonomy of universities. Universities need to be free. The government in most advanced countries does not control universities. So, broadly, the investments we will be making in education are, one, investments in teacher training.
Okay, I want to be able to get Nigerians to understand, education is broad.
Big.
Primary, secondary,
Yes.
tertiary.
Yes.
So when you talk about investment in education, break it down.
Yes.
Do you believe that government, for example, should fund university education?
Yes.
In other parts of the world, it doesn't always happen.
That's right.
People who go to university work hard, say that their parents pay for them to go to school. So when
Sure.
you're talking about funding for education, if you could be a bit clearer
Sure.
about which, part of education you're talking about and what your policy is.
That's right.
And it would be good if you take them one by one, starting
Yeah.
from primary, secondary to the higher.
Yes. When I tell you what we want to invest in, I will apply it to all three or anyone. The first investment is in teacher training. Teachers in primary schools and secondary schools, especially in this country, have not risen in recent years to the quality of where they should be at. And because of that, we see the impact on the quality of the young people coming out of educational institutions in Nigeria. In the universities, we are not investing in, one, enough teachers. At Harvard, the average ratio of student to teacher, or at MIT, is 3 or 4, maximum 9 to 1 professor. In Nigeria, yeah. No, I know. Even in state universities, the ratios are low. That's what I'm trying to say. Sure.
If you become president,
Yes.
and she becomes vice president,
That's right.
will you be offering free education at all levels for all Nigerians
We will
who are able to gain admission?
We will offer free education at primary and secondary school levels, subsidized education at government universities. Private universities will carry their normal fees. That's what we will do. There are many things to fund. If you will let me, I will explain to you exactly how the education sector reform will look like. I said, first of all, that we will fund teacher training. The quality of our teachers matters. We have to make sure that all the teachers in this country are recertified to make sure that they are fit for purpose. They have to be fit to teach our children to be competitive in the 21st century. We will reform the curriculum. The curriculum needs to move more to practical skills, vocational training, technology, entrepreneurship, rather than the very heavily theoretical profile it has today. We will reform how children learn. We will teach our children to learn in a more original manner rather than just cramming notes and regurgitating them at exams. We will encourage them to learn in a more original way that leads them to an innovation economy. Finally, we will invest heavily in educational infrastructure. As Umma said, We have to have in every government institution, there should be no government educational institution in which our children do not have modern learning aids like laptops provided by the government.
Now, I asked a question earlier,
Yeah.
and I think I'd like to come back to it
Sure.
a little bit later, which is around how you're going to pay for it.
Oh, sure.
I'd like us to interrogate it.
Oh, sure.
But before we meet members of the audience, questions, please.
Yeah.
If 2-3 people perhaps say who you are, and then ask your question, and then we'll come back to the
Then we have to talk about restructuring.
Yes.
My name is Joe Apolline. I'm a development consultant. My own issue is in terms of diversification. This issue has been giving lip service for so many years. My question is, how do you intend to diversify the economy? Because we have sectors like the agriculture, the beekeeping sector, where the majority of the income we consume in this country is imported. And we're talking of youth unemployment, getting to the economy. There are other sectors that you can unleash the economy to create jobs. So how do you intend to focus on diversification if you want to be able to create in Nigeria?
Thanks.
Thank you very much and good evening. My name is Chido Onuma. I'm the coordinator of the African Center for Media and Information Spaces. My question is, the issue, you agree with me that the issue of unity is important, national integration. And I haven't heard much of that in this campaign. Perhaps next to the security of this country, I think it's one of the major things that is holding the development of this country back. So, do you agree with that? And if you do, what do you make of it? What is your perspective in terms of the issue of national integration? Thank you.
I want to direct this question to Mrs. Umagesu. The issue of education, being an educationist myself, I want to know what your plans are to revive the education in Nigeria, one. And then also, I want you to talk broadly about your plans for reviving the Nigerian curriculum. I want Mrs. Umagesu to talk broadly about their plan in reviving the Nigerian curriculum to meet up the wants and
Education.
the education curriculum.
Okay. Now, you see, diversifying the Nigerian economy can be achieved and will be achieved by my administration in many ways. The first thing that is required to diversify the Nigerian economy is the political will to move away from the politics of oil rents and to move Nigeria to an innovation and manufacturing economy. The recycled old politicians have trapped us in the worship of the god of small things, which is crude oil. Who controls it? Who controls the allocation of oil blocks? All that. That is why you find a lot of our politicians paying lip service to diversification, but they spend 4 or 8 years in office, not much of diversification happens. Here's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
The big elephant in the room,
Yes.
before we talk about diversification, is also, of course, issues of resource control.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear what your position is
Exactly.
regarding resource control.
Yes.
And who takes what.
Sure. That's what I was coming to when I talked about political will. There is no way you can diversify the economy of this country without constitutional restructuring of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Nigeria, as it is today, is geared towards a monoproduct economy because of the command and control powers at the central government. If you restructure Nigeria to become a true federation based on 6 geopolitical zones or something like that, and the states or the regions have controlled their resources, they will generate their own resources and make a payment of a tax or royalty to the central government of about 30 or 40%. You will now find that the 6 zones will develop economically along the lines of their comparative or competitive advantage, all of which is not oil. Yeah, so restructuring and resource control is essential to breaking the back of oil dominance in Nigerian political economy.
And I looked at your plan.
Yes.
And your proposal on restructuring is very far-reaching.
Yes.
You talked about breaking the exclusive list,
Yes.
list,
Residual list.
etc. Having regions, banning local governments, very extensive plan.
I didn't say ban local governments, no. I said they should not be a constitutional tier of government, yes. Yes, exactly.
This far-reaching reform
Yes.
that will require constitutional amendment.
Oh, yes.
We all know how difficult that is. And so the question is, how are you, if you get elected into government,
Yes.
there is no indication that your party will have enough people in the National Assembly to be able to push this through. What are your plans for pushing your restructuring agenda if you get elected into office?
Thank you. Restructuring Nigeria is something on which we all know today that a vast majority of Nigerians want. So let's first start from the reality. The reality is that many Nigerians want this country to be constitutionally restructured. Yes. So that
Restructuring is, it means different things to different.
But in my proposal, I have explained, I'm the only presidential candidate who has laid out a clear and far-reaching proposal for constitutional restructuring. For me, it's not about talking restructuring just to get votes. And then maybe when you get there, you will not do it.
We can't make an assumption, therefore, that your proposal will get this buy-in.
But you start with a vision. That's what a leader does. A leader doesn't decree that everybody must go along with him. A leader lays out a path and makes an argument for it. My proposal for constitutional restructuring is one. We must return Nigeria to a proper federation. We are called the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but we are in reality a unitary state. Two, that federation should be based on geopolitical and geoeconomic zones, not states. That's my argument. The reason for that is predominantly economic, that there is a lot of economic advantage, a lot of economies of scale that come from a regional approach to economic development rather than many states which today are not viable fiscally. We know that about 30 of the 36 states in this country today are not fiscally viable. So, third, I believe that there must be resource control. Fourth, I believe that there should be only two tiers of government in the Constitution, and that is the federal government and the subnational units, because in most, if not all federations, that is the way it is. There is no federation I know of in the world that has local government areas as a constitutional tier of government. The only one, and which is an exception, is India. In what, so,
I'm still waiting to hear how you get the buy-in.
yes, but you talked about, yes, that's true. But you talked about different restructuring, meaning different things to different people. So I needed to clear that up. Yes. So because people are always confused about this. So I want to be very clear about what I mean by restructuring so that you won't go and say, YPP candidate talked about restructuring, but like most politicians, he didn't tell us what it meant. I will never be accused of that. Now, the fifth is that there must be a proper separation of religion from public policy in a constitutionally restructured Nigeria. I've sorted that out. Now let's move to how. When I become president in 2019, when I become president, here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I will sit down with the leadership of the National Assembly, because Nigeria cannot be restructured. The Constitution cannot be changed or amended without the participation of the National Assembly. We will sit down and have a leadership-level discussion where I will lay out my vision with an argument as to why it is good for this country. And I will persuade most of these leaders of the enlightened self-interest of all of us in this vision. It may not be 100% what I want. That's where the negotiation and the discussion comes in. You know, when I'm not going to be a military dictator. But I will present an executive bill based on this vision after discussion with the leadership of the National Assembly. I will set up a high-level presidential commission on constitutional restructuring made up of about 7 very distinguished Nigerians with no political partisanship leanings who will look at previous efforts like the National Conference, like Obasanjo's own attempt, and so on. And, you know, distill this. And then we'll say, look, where do we go from here? We will then present an executive bill. We will go directly to the Nigerian people and make the case for restructuring. And so that's Yeah.
Okay, it's still going to take a bit of time.
Yes.
Let's assume, and we're very optimistic,
Yes.
that you manage to get the buy-in that you want.
Yes.
It's still a lengthy process.
Yeah.
Because apart from the National Assembly, the state houses of assembly have to be involved in something. Earlier we were talking about education, and we
Yes.
talked about a budget of something like 30%.
Yes.
And when I asked Mrs. Getso about where that money was coming from,
Yes.
she answered that your restructuring agenda is what is going to give you the resources. While you're waiting for your restructuring
Yes, exactly. To happen. Yes.
how exactly will you be funding these far-reaching
Yes.
reforms that you want to do in education, in the economy, etc.?
There are many sources of revenue in this country, and there is also a monumental amount of waste that is going on in this country. If we stopped all these security votes and put some of that money into healthcare or education, we will do a much better job of governance. If we, I've said it in my proposal, in my manifesto, that within 2 years, I will bring the recurrent expenditure level down to 50% and increase capital spending to 50%.
Will you be sacking people?
No, not in, oh yes,
Expenditure goes
on salaries.
for civil servants.
Good.
Are you going to be sacking people?
Are you suggesting that we should spend the rest of eternity paying civil servants and our economy is sinking?
So the answer is yes.
No. Let me give you the answer. We will reform the civil service. There was a report that talked about the merging or the scrapping of certain bloated, repetitive, wasteful government agencies, no political will to implement it. One thing I'm going to tell you, President Kingsley Moghalu is going to be taking a lot of tough decisions. No, it's not, there's no, you can't make progress otherwise. That's what leadership is about. Go and look at Lee Kuan Yew. Go and look at Mahathir Mohamad. Look at China. People, you don't move by not.
Just so we are
Yeah.
clear, you've talked about creating jobs.
Absolutely.
And here you seem to be talking about sacking people.
Let me tell you what will happen to the public sector. No, let me tell you what will happen to the public sector. You're not going to kick people out into the street, but we need to rationalize the public sector and make sure that, one, it's productive, and two, people who are redundant can be moved into other areas. I intend, as president, to recruit 1.5 million new policemen and women for the Nigerian police force. Train them, equip them, and have them recruited. For a modern 21st century police, we are 200 million people, and we have 300 and something thousand police officially. 1/3 of them are guarding VIPs in their homes. Another 70,000 are alleged to be ghost workers. You have to invest in securing this country. So you can move some people from other aspects of the public service to security services and train them. That's one way to go about it. Some people, if you want to let them go, you don't kick them out into the street. You help them access a new way of livelihood, either with a package, an exit package, or you direct them to the venture capital fund to help them start new businesses. So there are many innovative ways of modernizing and preventing wasteful recurrent expenditure in this country.
Okay. Now, obviously, we're talking about police, and so therefore we are also touching on issues around security.
Yeah.
And there was a question just asked not too long ago about the question of national unity.
Yes.
Perhaps you can talk a little bit
About that.
and we can go
Sure.
into issues around
Yeah.
security, and we'll also take a few questions from people at home.
Sure. The most defining element of the Moghalu Getso administration will be the emphasis on foundations. We will build a united Nigeria. We will heal this country and build a nation. How do you do that? You do it, first of all, by laying out a national ambition around which we can all unite, an ambition that unites all of us rather than our spending time on our differences. We spend time on uniting to achieve a particular goal. Why is it that whenever we go to play soccer, you don't remember whether you're Igbo or Hausa or Yoruba? That's a uniting thing. So if we had a national ambition that all of us could identify with, that becomes that national ambition. Oh, yes, I have. That national ambition would be as follows. that we will be the most powerful black nation on earth, that we will have an economy that is built on entrepreneurship and hard work, that we will be one people with a goal to make economic progress and live in, there must be peace, security, justice, equity, and the rule of law. These are the elements of a national ambition on which we can all agree. So that's the first thing. The second thing is by running an inclusive government without sacrificing merit. Because in every part of Nigeria, you have competent people. So we will find them everywhere. Nobody will complain. A federal character is not being respected, but everybody will feel included in my government. So there will be nobody complaining of marginalization in a Kingsley Moghalu presidency. It's not going to happen.
We intend to do some artificial things that are created in the present history. When you see the indigenization of the thing, I remember when we used to have some kind of thing. So the government has a kind of way where it's not supposed to. So when it comes to feeling of home state, whether it's national or international, whatsoever, in Nigeria now we've restricted ourselves on religion and region. So our government, by the grace of God, we're going to remove all those indigenous of a thing and the religious statue of a thing. But just when you're a Nigerian, you're 100% a Nigerian or considered a Nigerian.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call on someone talking about inclusion. Mr. Richard Ezekiel has questions to ask, and we're going to need our interpreter, some language interpreter, as well as both
Submissions I'm seeing here, I've checked and see that there is no fund for persons, especially in Nigeria. When you look at it, we pay tax. Our money is used to run the government, and there is nothing for us to do.
Good.
Thank you very much. So, question one from Awe Imam, who says, if you divert the money for social investment, does that mean that all the 500,000 Empower volunteers will be out of work and essentially you'll be sacking them? Another person, Baba Nasi, he says, I'm convinced that you are able to match the highest office. However, on the NNPC group issue, you promised to sell it on NSC Nigeria. Why not manage overhaul or restructure? So it seems to be suggesting that you say you're going to sell the NNPC.
Partially privatize the NNPC.
Then we have another question about how you solve the power problem and what measure you put in place to choose the people that are going to work with you. So read those things and maybe start with
disabilities. Yes, let me deal with the issue of disabilities. Now, it's a real shame that public governance in this country utterly has no regard for prioritizing the needs of people with disabilities. This is against the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which Nigeria is a signatory to. My government will begin to put that legal obligation into practice with practical policy to help people with disabilities. Let me give you an example. When I was deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Committee of Governors sat down and discussed the issue of persons living with disabilities. And we agreed and directed all banks in Nigeria to create facilities for access, physical access, for persons with disabilities to access banking halls and banking transactions. So that shows already that I am conscious of this. Now, yes, of course. Yes, yes. Now, for people with disabilities, we will bring in experts. I'm not an expert on disabilities. I cannot be an expert on everything. The important thing is that the Ministry of Social Welfare under my presidency will set up a very, very strong disabilities policy unit, which will set out regulations and support for persons with disabilities in this country to access all public spaces. So we will make sure of that. We will support them. We will invest in creating the right environment physically in terms of infrastructure and legally for persons with disabilities.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to take a quick break.
Sure.
Please stay with us.
Absolutely. Yes. Indigenous, yeah. Well, let me tell you, first of all, that the party's constitution had been made before I joined the party.
So you joined a party that has principles and beliefs that the constitution.
No, not at all. The party is re-examining some of these issues, and we will have a convention to address this particular issue and make sure that there is no difference of view. I have said that the party is looking at its constitution. I joined the party because I believe...
You admit it is in your manifesto.
Yes, so no, that's fine. I mean, you've read it out, yes, but it is a living document. It's a document that's subject to change. My vision does not support zoning. I believe in meritocracy. The party, since I joined the party, remember that I only became the presidential candidate of the party in September. Life hasn't ended. We're going to be taking another look at our constitution, and we'll be making the necessary amendments. So I don't see any inconsistency, because the party, since I became a presidential candidate and I laid out this vision, remember, I am the leader of the party, having become its presidential candidate. So a leader can say to his colleagues, look, this thing was in our constitution, but we need to take a second look at it. That process is ongoing. It's not a problem at all.
You're not imposing your views
on no, I'm not imposing at all. But we have all, in fact, agreed that we need to take a second look at this. So there's no daylight between me and the party at all.
My question is, I'm going to ask a question on the issue of education and power. Issues have been raised on it, and I've discovered the presidential candidate of the Vice has been giving us long-term strategies. And what we needed in Nigeria today, we need short-term strategies that will keep, once you be by God's grace, God will become president of Nigeria. What are your short-term strategies in terms of power and education? And you've not been making recognize of institutions. You have not been talking about institutions. Like in education, you've not been talking about the BEC. And because your powers as a president, as federal government is limited in terms of basic education, because the states are there. So you should be talking about institutions. Then, that also leads me to when somebody was raising the issue, somebody had a question about what you do to the money market and all these things. You see, we need to look at the existing institutions. You made mention of that you are going to set up a fund. The only difference I've seen is the issue of no collateral. But you can also do it to the existing funds we have instead of creating more institutions.
The first step that my government will take towards fighting corruption is to tackle the root causes of corruption. The value system is broken in this country, and that is what is feeding corruption. So it doesn't matter what you do at the surface. If you don't address the root, the fact that Nigeria does not have a philosophical foundation which requires a value system to turn Nigeria into a great country, a value system that all of us agree on, and we, the citizens, can all agree. It is all of us working together that will make this country work. Now, so that's number one. We're going to include the study of ethics in our schools, especially at primary and secondary levels, because that teaches children right and wrong. No. Yes? Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. The next thing that we will do is to bring transparency into governance processes. That is a proactive approach to fighting corruption. We will make sure that contract awards and budget processes are far more transparent. From the very first budget of my government, the budget will be subjected to a forensic audit before it is taken to the National Assembly. That means that we will weed out any budget padding. Yeah, that's the next thing is that we will impartially enforce accountability for acts of corruption. The fight against corruption will begin inside my government, not with opposition. Now, if any crimes have been committed under the law and they don't have any statute of limitations, the law must take its course. We have a judiciary. So you're not going to stop the work of the judiciary. That's a matter for the judiciary. But my approach to fighting corruption is forward-looking. It is to create a new environment where you reduce corruption markedly, not an approach that focuses on looking to the past, whereby people can say you're witch hunting. I don't think that is the real issue. The issue is to create systems that make corruption difficult. And if you are found to be corrupt, that there's the political will to punish you. Not to be talking about fighting corruption, but members of your political party are corrupt, nothing happens to them. But if you're in the opposition, it's easy to target you. So, yeah, power. Then when we come to power, here's my approach to power. First, the decentralization of the national grid. A lot of these questions come back to restructuring. But let's not dwell on that. The decentralization of the national grid is, yes, spread across the country. That will be our approach to power. Using hydroelectric and fossil energy, focusing them more on industrial production areas like Lagos, like Kano, like Aba, or Onitsha, or Ogun State, some of those kinds of places. The reason is that if you make sure that these parts of Nigeria have 24-hour electricity, a lot of things will happen. The prices of goods will come crashing down because, yes. Yes. Sure. And I was, yes. Good. Good. How my policy differs is, number one, the focus on industrial areas as a priority of power infrastructure. Number two, the focus on renewable energy for the normal population. I want to move Nigeria's power policy more towards renewable energy than to fossil energy. What percentage of what? There will be a mix, but I think that at least 50 to 60% of Nigeria's power should come from renewable energy. And I think that's very easy to, it's possible. Yeah. Oh, I have a 4-year mandate. So, you see, I don't like to make unrealistic promises. Exactly. Within my term of office, yes, that I can promise you. I don't like to make flowery promises, but I want to tell you that it's not even a question of making promises. It's a question of, I have a plan for Nigeria. That plan is in this book, Build, Innovate, and Grow. I'm the only presidential candidate to lay out a comprehensive plan for governance and leadership, for nation building, for the economy, and for foreign affairs. Oh, what? No, no.
They don't have the
to talk about that. I think this is something is very wrong, and clearly part of the problem is corruption in the military. But a lot, that's fine, but that's fine. But in the past 3 years, we have seen a lot of increase in defense spending. Is that not so? We have not seen concomitant results in the field. The results is that there is a reversal against the Nigerian army. And that's why I say that the Boko Haram has technically degraded the Nigerian army. And that's something is wrong.
Okay, so something is wrong. What are you going to do?
Good. Let me tell you what I'm going to do about it. First, as president, I am going to work with the army to change their intelligence operations. We have to focus on... You can change the leadership.
So I want you to be
yes. Let's remember, as president of Nigeria, I will be the commander-in-chief. So you have the responsibility, not just the authority, to secure the lives and properties of Nigerians. That's going to be my first task. And whatever I need to do to make sure that Nigerian lives are safe in the northeast or the northwest or wherever in this country, I will have the political will to do it, including fighting corruption in the military at the leadership levels if that is what is required. So I want to be very clear about that. Secondly, I think that the whole national security apparatus in this country needs to be made much more professional. What I mean is that the leadership of the national security institutions in this country is skewed in one direction. Most of them come from one part of the country. Most of them come from one religion. What does that tell me? I want to be very clear, please. Yeah. What it tells me is that there is a far more stronger interest in regime protection than in protecting the Nigerian people. Yes. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, listen, let me tell you that there are about 17 or 16 national security agencies. When you talk about the police force, you talk about the state security services, you talk about, several civil defense and so on and so forth. Several of these things. The leadership, please. Yeah, I'm just talking about the leadership. Who head them? Those who head them. So when you look at it, you don't see, what you see is a certain tilt in a certain direction. What this says is that there is an implicit assumption that for whatever reason, those security agencies have to be headed by, we saw what happened with the SSS, with the Department of State Security. No, I'm saying it. Yes. Sure. Yes. 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 Mostly. Yes. Yes. That's what is the reality. That's the fact. I'm saying that the Buhari administration is not making security leadership appointments on the basis of professionalism. And I can justify it. I can justify what I'm saying.
So, but for someone who said you want to make appointments against the enemy,
yes.
you're making a big deal of the fact that you say he's doing a certain section. Because he could argue he actually appointed a enemy, and that's why he didn't have a balance in the good.
No, he said he appoints people based on those he can trust. That's what the president said. His government's appointments from the beginning were very heavily skewed, and when he was challenged, look, the secretary to the government of the federation is from where? The national security advisor is from where? The chief of staff, let me finish. The chief of staff is from where? But please, there's no need splitting hairs. all three come from the same geopolitical zone. I, as president, will not do that. My SGF, my NSA, and chief of staff will come from 3 different political zones. They will never come, all 3 in the presidency, come from one zone. It's not going to happen. Yes, yes. 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 Fantastic. Yes. My thoughts on these things is that national security is far more complex, as we have seen in reality. The Buhari administration has focused mostly on Boko Haram. And then we saw that the herdsmen conflict metastasized into a huge thing. Now you have bandits attacking Zamfara, Katsina, President Buhari's home state. The governor, just said recently that the state is surrounded by bandits. So the security of lives and property in this country has broken down. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. 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 So I was saying that the argument by President Buhari that most of his appointments, in trying to justify his appointments after criticisms of sectionalism, and he said, you appoint those you trust. He is saying implicitly that after having been a military head of state of this country, after having been a general in the army with a long career in this country, coming back as a civilian president, the only people he can trust are people from a particular geographical area. That is not a statement. Yes, I've made that point. Yes. Yes. What I will do is as follows. I will govern Nigeria as president, working with the people of Nigeria, not on the basis of nepotism, not on the basis of tribalism, not on the basis of religious irredentism, but these 4 offices will help me govern this country. 1, the Office of National Strategy. 2, the Office of Risk Management. 3, the Office of Performance Management. 4, the Office of Human Capital Development. These 4 offices will be part of the presidency, and that will help me ensure that our presidency will be effective, will achieve the goals we have set for it in 4 years, will manage the risks that could prevent us from achieving those goals and from not achieving what we said we would. Yes. On security, yes, on security, we are going to reform the control of our borders. When you appoint professional leaders of security based on knowledge, not based on where they come from, you will have better security in Nigeria than we have today. When you secure our borders are not secure. Yeah. Sure. Yes. Of course. I totally agree. I'm not, no, I am not saying, border security is only one of several, a mix of security issues. Nigeria's in the Northwest, the banditry. The banditry is cost. Good. Okay. The banditry in the Northwest is caused fundamentally by the fact that Nigeria is not in control of its territory. That's what I'm saying. The Nigerian government today is not in control of the territorial integrity of this country. That's why you have banditry in Zamfara and Katsina. That's why you have the herdsmen. That's why you have the Boko Haram. Of all these, the Boko Haram are operating partly across borders. President Buhari told us that the herdsmen conflict is caused by people who came from Libya. If that is the case, how did they cross our borders? then the thing in Zamfara, let me finish. We don't have an effective police force. That's part of the problem, and I've told you how I'm going to address it. It's a policing issue. In the case of the herdsmen, there are underlying issues like desertification of the north, which is putting pressure on herders to move southward in terms of looking for grazing lands. But that still doesn't excuse killing people in their villages and taking over their farmlands. My government will deal with the underlying issues of desertification in the north. We're going to bring in innovation agriculture that will turn all those northern desert areas into farmlands. And so, oh yes, it was done in Israel. We will do it in Nigeria. So it's not impossible. It is the incompetence of our political leaders that makes it look as if some of these problems are so huge that they cannot be solved. I will bring competence. I will bring vision. I will bring political will. President Buhari has not been able to bring the herdsmen to order. He told us that there's nothing he can do but pray. And I said, we did not elect you to be a prayer warrior. We elected you to secure our lives. Sure.
In terms of the issue of a section of the country that's high levels of poverty, do you see a correlation between insecurity and poverty, like some people say?
Of course. Sure.
We all know that a hungry man is an angry man.
Yeah.
And if you see, what do you think all these resurgences and all these challenges are coming from the farmer? That's because
poverty.
It's not,
yeah.
It's not right to feed the people around here. To your surprise, if I tell you that most of these people who are into this kidnapping and all sorts of substances, they are just doing to feed their families. Because the country has not carried them along to give them something, a return to them being Nigerian citizens.
Absolutely.
Nigerian citizens are so very deprived of their own right of being citizens. And I always talk of patriotism. Nigeria has taken too much from its citizens that the citizens are not able to feel in their part of the country.
Yeah.
Because if you see a typical man, I can remember when we were in secondary school, there's this thing, you see people, when there's a riot or whatsoever, you see people breaking the government property and calling it Kayan Baba community. Because people are feeling like the government is even an enemy to them. So if at all today our leaders would create a balance between the citizens and the government, or bridge the gap between the rulers and the rules. So definitely you see that Nigerians will have this sense of patriotism,
yes.
Feel like the country is giving them something to return, and they will walk towards paying back to their country. Let's take the example of military men and our armed forces that have been killed along the line, or they have been injured and they are no longer useful now in this state. What has the government offered to their families? So I'm very sure they have this in their mind. If I sacrifice my life in the cause of making my country a better place or guarding the life of others, what's my destiny tomorrow? So this whole thing, they are going hand in hand. The country, the poverty, and the insecurity are all things.
They're all linked.
Yeah, they're all related.
Now, let me take two last questions. We're walking out of time very quickly. There's a gentleman who would like to
said the then governor has achieved a lot of political activities. I'm not sure if I get it correct. And yeah, so I want to know if the Restructuring after less power and single regulation, because then governor was suspended, he said, because he exposed corruption in central bank. And you seem to have endorsed that sort of thing. I don't know if you still believe in that.
My name is Usman Jao, I'm a lawyer. Now my president is still on security.
Yeah.
And so I would like to know your take on the fact that some section of the society, say, under for example, recently said that the security in the northwest and the northeast is likely due to the fact that there is economic economic development potential in those areas, and so you believe in that.
My name is Aki Akbar. I'm an education with the state of law. I would like to ask specifically what strategy you have in place to square up against those big candidates or the new people who can they visit.
That's a good question.
Again, begin to convince us that this is not just an opportunity for you to
my name is Mustafa Saidi. I'm a development enthusiast and communicator. I'm sorry I'm going to take closer back. When we were talking about your policies for the education sector, in Nigeria, I think apart from the federal government colleges that we have, secondary schools are under the state governments, as well as primary schools. Now, if anything else, 2015 to 2019 should have taught us what can be done in Nigeria and how it can be done and why it is going to fail. Mr. Kingsley Mogadu, you are running for the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Should you win and then no any other candidate from YPP emerge as governor, how can you implement these educational policies given that you don't have one single state approach? And how do you achieve the change of policy at secondary and primary school level? That is my question.
What happened was a simple disagreement of principle over not the substance of the issues of that day, of the time. No, it was just a disagreement over approach. That's it. And those differences have been resolved. Yes?
The quote from the independent,
yes.
you told the independent,
yes.
And I quote, you said the lesson that can be drawn from it is the limits of central bank independence.
Yes.
There's a very thin line between central bank independence and regional constitution. You seem to imply
yes.
in that quote that independence has limits. And in
of course it does.
Where we talk about
of course it does.
And the fact that we need to grow strong.
Yes. Please let me yeah. Please, yeah. Yes. No, please. Let me clarify. The quote itself tells you what the issue was about. The issue was not about whether I was endorsing corruption or not. Somebody asked a question. Of course I'm not corrupt. If I was corrupt, I wouldn't be running for president of Nigeria with the zeal and the passion and the kind of campaign I have run across this country, the sacrifice I have made. So of course, that question doesn't even begin to apply to me. So, no, oh no, I believe. No. Please. I believe wholeheartedly. In fact, my criticism of the central bank today is that it has lost its independence. So obviously I believe in the independence of the central bank. And the achievements that we recorded under the leadership of Sanusi, both in areas of economic policy, in managing inflation down to 8%, the achievements we recorded in stabilizing the banking sector after the global financial crisis, in which I led the implementation of those reforms, those achievements were recorded because of the independence of the bank. There was a specific situation at the time, period. There was a disagreement about approach, not about the substance. And that disagreement has since been discussed and settled between me and my brother and my friend. People may wish to go into all that, but it's not important at this time.
Because the issue was not a private issue. It wasn't an issue between you and the president. It was an issue that was a national issue.
Then I took a position. Yes. I took a position of principle.
Which was what? Was
which was at the time, from the quote you said, that I felt at the time that we were going into a little bit of political activism. That's all. It was a matter of interpretation. Yes. Oh. Do you want to answer that? Please. Yeah, answer.
We said we don't have government, but we do have
candidates. Yes.
I'm very sure even if it doesn't have 100% government.
Exactly.
Exactly. So you can't say, you can't predict.
Exactly.
It's like you're making a prediction. So how many
we have over 300 candidates. 16 candidates for governor, 22 candidates for Senate, 55 candidates for House of Reps, and nearly 200 candidates, or more than 100 and something candidates for state houses of assembly. Many of them will win. Therefore, the YPP will be part of we of the government of this country in 2019. Let there be no doubt about it. So we are a real political party, a movement of real people on the ground. The YPP is not a special purpose vehicle for anybody's presidential ambition. We are not a briefcase political party. We are not an internet political party. We're a real movement with real followers. And you will see it when the election results come, starting with the presidency, which we will win. Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to be very, very clear that we will defeat President Muhammadu Buhari at the ballot box in February. Let's please, I want to be very clear. Please. The reason is simple. The reason is simple. People are tired of the old recycled politicians in this country. So APC will go, and the PDP is not an option, because they too have failed. You don't jump from frying pan to fire. What Nigeria needs now is a modern, technocratically competent presidency with a world view of transformation. That's what we need. We don't need old recycled politicians. Now, listen. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. You are wrong. I tell you, and I put it to you, as the lawyers would say, you are flat out wrong. If you are part of a process, of an electoral process of any sort, even a straw poll like what you were referring to, and you have reasons to doubt the integrity of that process, even people who contest a normal election, if the election was rigged, they go to court and they have a right to do so, and they can reject the result. Is that not so? Good. So, listen, the judgment of the people is what we are presenting ourselves for. If you lose an election fair and square, you would not be the first person to lose it. If you lose an election due to mago-mago, you have every right to reject it and walk away from the process. Period. You cannot deny me that right. The exercise you're referring to was a political assassination attempt. The whole purpose of it was to terminate my candidacy because some forces were threatened by that candidacy. And that result came about by processes that were totally untransparent. And I have every right to say there was a little bit of untransparent, not even a little. I can go into details if you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at what point you discover that a process is not transparent. Whether in the beginning or at the end, you have the right, as a matter of principle, to say this election has been manipulated. And you have
this stands as a kind of opportunity even to bring out what I have on Nigerians, kind of lifetime dream. I've always dreamed of a way to see how I can impact the life of a typical Nigerian. And it's not about gender only, but it is still about gender, because according to Professor Jesse Morgan, 50-50 gender equity in this government. is an opportunity.
You said that's you said it's an aspirational target. Yes.
I said we're aiming for 50-50 gender equity in the cabinet appointments. My cabinet will have 1 man, 1 woman. 1 man, 1 man. It's a commitment as far as the cabinet is concerned. Yes.
So, of course, this might look at gender because it's not even only about gender. We're looking at giving people that have what to offer this country an opportunity to come forward and help us build a real nation. Because we know that Nigeria today is not being real in all of its leaders.
Thank you very much. Sadly, we run out of time. I'm happy to do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Kadaria.
Thank you.
For making yourself available to Nigeria. The next edition of the candidates will take place probably in exactly 7 days at the same time. 7 to 9 p.m. To be a live show, once more I will be talking to the presidential and vice presidential candidates of the ruling All Progressive Party, APC. Join us as we provide a platform for Nigerians to ask the president and vice president questions of their performance in office and why they deserve to be re-elected. Please join us as you did today, and we all wish you a very good